The 21st century will be defined by water. Not oil, not technology, not ideology, water. The world is running out of fresh water, and when the water runs out, everything collapses. Agriculture collapses. Cities collapse, nations collapse, and then comes war. Water wars are not theoretical, they are already happening, and they are about to get much worse. Because the math is brutal. The world's population is growing, industrial demand for water is skyrocketing, agriculture uses 70% of all fresh water, and climate change is disrupting rainfall patterns. Meanwhile, aquifers, underground water reserves that supply billions of people, are being depleted faster than they can refill. Rivers that have flowed for thousands of years are drying up, lakes are disappearing, glaciers that feed major rivers are melting away, and there is no substitute for water. You can replace oil with solar or nuclear. You cannot replace water. Every human needs water to survive. Every crop needs water to grow. Every factory needs water to operate. When the water is gone, there is no workaround. There is only conflict. Let me start with the scale of the problem. Fresh water is only 2.5% of all water on Earth, and most of that fresh water is locked in glaciers and ice caps. Only about 1% of Earth's water is accessible fresh water in rivers, lakes, and aquifers. That 1% supports 8 billion people, and it is running out. Global water use has increased sixfold over the past century. In 1900, humans used about 600 cubic kilometers of water per year. Today we use over 4,000 cubic kilometers per year, and demand is still rising. By 2050, water demand is projected to increase by another 20 to 30%. Why? 3 reasons. 1. Population growth. The global population is expected to reach 9.7 billion by 2050. More people means more water needed for drinking, sanitation, and food production. 2. Economic development. As countries industrialize, water demand explodes. Factories need water. Power plants need water. Growing middle classes eat more meat, which requires vastly more water than growing vegetables. It takes 15,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of beef. 3. Climate change. Climate change is making water scarcity worse. Droughts are becoming more frequent and more severe. Rainfall patterns are shifting. Some regions are getting too much water in the form of floods. Other regions are getting none. And glaciers, which act as natural water storage, releasing meltwater during dry seasons, are disappearing. The Himalayas, which feed the rivers that supply 2 billion people in Asia, are losing ice mass rapidly. When those glaciers are gone, and rivers will run dry in the dry season, 2 billion people will lose their primary water source. Here is the critical point. The problem is not just that we are using more water. The problem is that we are depleting non-renewable water sources. Aquifers are underground layers of rock that hold water. They are recharged by rainfall, but many of the world's largest aquifers are being pumped faster than they are recharged. This is groundwater mining. You are extracting water that took thousands of years to accumulate, and once it is gone, it is gone. The Ogallala Aquifer in the United States supplies water to the Great Plains, America's breadbasket. It is being depleted. Scientists estimate that parts of the Ogallala could run dry within 25 years. When that happens, industrial agriculture in the Great Plains will collapse. A North China Plain aquifer supplies water to 400 million people and produces half of China's wheat. It is being depleted at an alarming rate. Some estimates suggest it could be exhausted within 30 years. The Indus River Basin aquifer supplies water to Pakistan and parts of India. It is one of the most overstressed aquifers in the world, and it is running out. These are not small problems. These are existential threats to food production and national survival. And it is not just aquifers. Rivers are drying up. The Colorado River, which supplies water to 40 million people in the United States and Mexico, is over-allocated. There is not enough water in the river to meet the legal claims on it. Lake Mead, the reservoir created by the Hoover Dam, is at historically low levels. If it drops much further, the dam will not be able to generate electricity, and cities like Las Vegas will face severe water shortages. The Yellow River in China used to flow year-round. Now it frequently runs dry before reaching the sea. The Murray-Darling River in Australia has been devastated by drought and overuse. The Aral Sea in Central Asia, once the world's fourth largest lake, has shrunk to 10% of its original size because the rivers feeding it were diverted for irrigation. The lake is now a toxic salt flat, and the communities that depended on it have been destroyed. So what happens when the water runs out? 3 things. 1. Agricultural collapse. Agriculture uses 70% of global fresh water. Most of that is for irrigation. When groundwater is depleted and rivers run dry, irrigation stops. And when irrigation stops, crop yields collapse. Regions that are currently major food producers will no longer be able to grow food. This will cause food shortages. Food prices will spike. Countries that depend on food imports will face famine. And this will trigger mass migration. People will leave regions where they can no longer grow food or access water. They will move to regions that still have water. This is already happening. Syria's civil war was partly triggered by a severe drought that destroyed agriculture and forced rural populations into cities. The drought created economic desperation. The desperation fueled unrest, the unrest became war, and the war created the refugee crisis. This pattern will repeat. Climate-driven droughts will destroy livelihoods. People will migrate, receiving countries will resist, conflict will follow. 2. Urban water crisis. Cities are already running out of water. Cape Town, South Africa nearly ran out of water in 2018. The city implemented Day Zero plans, the day when the taps would be turned off and residents would have to line up for rationed water. Cape Town narrowly avoided Day Zero through extreme conservation measures. But the crisis is not over. Cape Town will face water shortages again. Chennai, India ran out of water in 2019. The reservoirs that supply the city went dry. Water had to be brought in by train. Mexico City is sinking because it is pumping groundwater faster than it is being recharged. The city is literally collapsing into the empty aquifers below it, and it still does not have enough water. Sao Paulo, Brazil faced severe water shortages in 2014 and 2015. Reservoirs dropped to less than 5% capacity. The city came within weeks of running out of water entirely. Jakarta, Indonesia is sinking even faster than Mexico City. The city is extracting so much groundwater that the land is subsiding. Parts of Jakarta are sinking at a rate of 25 centimeters per year. The government is planning to relocate the capital because Jakarta is becoming uninhabitable. These are not small cities. These are megacities with populations of 10 million or more. When megacities run out of water, you get social collapse, riots, mass migration, economic devastation. Your city's future lines for rationed water, or rich people with private wells while you die of thirst. 3. Water wars. When water becomes scarce, nations fight over it. This is not speculation. It is already happening. The Nile River is the lifeblood of Egypt. Egypt depends on the Nile for 90% of its fresh water. But the Nile flows through 11 countries. Ethiopia is building the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam on the Blue Nile. This dam will allow Ethiopia to store water and generate electricity. But it will reduce the flow of water to Egypt. Egypt has said this is an existential threat. Egypt's government has stated that it will use all means necessary to protect its water supply. That is a threat of war. Egypt and Ethiopia have been negotiating for years. The negotiations have failed. The dam is nearly complete. Ethiopia is filling the reservoir. Egypt is watching its water supply decrease. This situation could lead to war, and it would not be a small war. Egypt has one of the most powerful militaries in the Middle East. Ethiopia has a large and capable military. A war between Egypt and Ethiopia over the Nile would destabilize the entire region. The Indus River is another flashpoint. The Indus flows from the Himalayas through India and into Pakistan. Pakistan depends on the Indus for agriculture and drinking water. India and Pakistan have a treaty governing the use of the Indus. But tensions are rising. India is building dams and diverting water from tributaries of the Indus. Pakistan accuses India of violating the treaty. India denies this. But the reality is that India has the upper hand. India controls the headwaters of the rivers that flow into Pakistan. If India decides to restrict the flow, Pakistan's agriculture would be devastated. Pakistan has said that water is a red line. Pakistan's military and government have stated that they will not allow India to choke off their water supply. India and Pakistan are both nuclear powers. They have fought 3 wars. A 4th war over water is not unthinkable. In fact, it is increasingly likely. The Mekong River flows through China, Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. China is building dams on the upper Mekong. These dams allow China to control the flow of the river. Downstream countries, especially Vietnam and Cambodia, depend on the Mekong for agriculture and fishing. When China restricts the flow, water levels drop downstream. Fish populations collapse. Rice paddies dry up. Vietnam and Cambodia have protested. But China ignores them. China has the power. China will use it. This creates resentment, it creates tension, and in the future, it could create conflict. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers flow through Turkey, Syria, and Iraq. Turkey is building dams that reduce the flow to Syria and Iraq. Syria and Iraq have accused Turkey of weaponizing water. Turkey denies this, but the dams give Turkey leverage. If Turkey wants to pressure Syria or Iraq, it can reduce the water flow. This turns water into a geopolitical weapon. And then there is the broader competition over transboundary aquifers. Many aquifers cross national borders. When one country pumps groundwater aggressively, it affects neighboring countries. There are few international agreements governing transboundary aquifers. This creates a race to the bottom. Each country tries to pump as much as possible before the aquifer runs dry. This accelerates depletion, and it creates conflict.